Some further thoughts on Skip Schumacher. Now the Marlins manager, plus the World Series is upon us. 1 day away. Going to dig into some of that. Plus, Joey Wendle talk today on today's Locked On Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked On Marlins. This is your daily Marlins podcast with me, Peter Pratt. Don't forget to follow me, guys, of course, on Twitter at Miami Marlins _UK. Almost 5,000 followers. Not that I'm counting, but approaching a milestone of sorts. What happens at 5,000? Absolutely nothing. Nevertheless, follow me there. If you are listening to the pod, hit subscribe. Reminder, it's free and available everywhere. Everywhere you get them, you can get them. Locked On Marlins. If you aren't watching, reminder, there is also a YouTube channel, also called Locked On Marlins, coincidentally. And if you are watching, hello, greetings. It is another solo pod. It has been a lot of solos this week as my right-hand man, Sean, is off work for the week and unavailable. However, just to tease out, this is Thursday's episode. Friday's episode, it is 95% confirmed that Craig Mish is joining the show, so we're going to dig into a Locked On Mish's vibe tomorrow, hopefully. Yet to be fully confirmed, but hopefully Craig will join the show and we can get into some of the finer details around the Marlins hire of their manager, also assistant GM talk, also Mel Stottlemyre talk, also perhaps kind of looking ahead to the offseason moves, and also maybe looking at the World Series, because, guys, the World Series is upon us starting tomorrow, Friday. So looking forward to that one. I'm going to talk about that shortly, but as you know, if you guys listened to Tuesday's episode, as I was about to hit record, effectively the news dropped. Skip Schumacher. And it's been confirmed by a few sources now. That is the pronunciation. No Schumacher, a la kind of Michael Schumacher from Formula One. No. It's Schumacher. Skip Schumacher. So, Skip is in. As I mentioned on Tuesday, it was like immediate reaction, immediate feelings. I've had time to dwell on it. Also to take in some information across Marlins Twitter. How's everyone feeling about it? Rightly, I'm seeing some questions about why is everyone getting hyped? Why so hyped on Skip? Also, shout out, Alex Contreras. Spotted a tweet from him from the end of May 2022 saying, and he had his short list of managers the Marlins could and should consider, or candidates. At that time, clearly we didn't know what the plan was for Donnie, and I think Alex was alluding to the fact that the Marlins perhaps needed to make a managerial change, a new voice. Donnie ended up agreeing with that idea, as did Kim and Bruce, and thus Alex Contreras drew up his candidate shortlist. I think there were 14 names on there. Number 2 on the list, Skip Schumacher. Also on the list, Joe Espada. There was a few other names that they've interviewed as well, so shout out to Alex Contreras all the way back in May, mentioning these guys. There was no usual dudes. Probably Joe Madden was still, maybe he was still with the Angels then. I can't even recall. But, you know, he was absolutely on the money there in terms of the types of candidates maybe the Marlins would go after. Skip Schumacher has got the job, and we await the presser with Skip to get a sense of the direction he's going to take with this club. But I think some of the information, the ability, but equally the weight, the tenacity, and his ability to teach as well and instruct. And I think that is going to be critical, clearly, from a Marlins perspective. And there's no reason, like, I guess the one thing we have to call out is I think Donnie's ability to teach hitting in many ways is up there as well. Like, Donnie, one of the best hitters of all time in some ways. And so we shouldn't forget that. But I think the sense was, from what Craig reported, was the Marlins were wowed by Skip and how he interviewed. They got him back for a second, and they quickly kind of prioritized their guy and went and got their guy. Seen some bits. What did I see? Keith Law What is it with Keith Law and the Marlins? I think he's just trolling the Marlins. I think he is. But he was up there saying, oh, well, the Marlins basically have gone with Skip Schumacher. They've decided to hire him based on an interview. He's never done it before. The Marlins don't know that he's going to be successful. You've got Luis Rojas available, who's managed before, and blah, blah, blah. Keith Law, listen, you probably aren't listening right now. You blocked me when I called you out on the Max Meyer shout back in the offseason. You were dead wrong on that. And you're dead wrong on this one too, brother. You're not listening, but I don't care. Someone clip this and send it to Keith Law. You're wrong about this. The Marlins made the right call. They saw their guy, they identified their guy, and they went and got him. Talking about Luis Rojas because he's got managerial experience and he'd be perhaps a better fit for the Marlins. That's an absolute nonsense, Keith. It's nonsense, brother. Really is. Go and look at I talked about it on the pod last week. Go and look at Luis Rojas's record with a bloated financial situation in New York. He managed to have 2 seasons under 500 and a clubhouse running wild and after raccoons. Come on, Keith. You can't be serious. You are trolling the Marlins. You have to be. You have to be, because that is not a legitimate take. No, it isn't. The Marlins, this is the thing that I like for them. They haven't gone down and been swayed by the past. Who's done what? What's their record like? Every situation is unique. The Marlins are a unique ball club in many ways. And I love the fact that they have taken a punt on a guy that has just risen through the ranks quickly. All reports that we've seen subsequently have said Skip Schumacher, well thought of, teaching, tenacity. I think he's a perfect hire. Some have called out to say, should they have gone, with a Latino guy, a Spanish-speaking guy? I understand where that's coming from, clearly because there's a lot of Latino players that play for the Marlins and play in baseball in general. Does it matter? I don't think so. I don't think it does. And the reality is the majority of the Marlins players, because I've heard them and engaged with them before, their English is fine. And for those that are maybe lagging behind, they're making the necessary steps to learn. So I don't think that is. Would it have helped? Or from Skip's perspective, could he go and learn some Spanish? Maybe. I don't even know. I don't know if he does. Be intrigued to know if he does speak a little bit of Spanish. I don't know. It'd be interesting and maybe helpful for him in the future. Just trying to be able to engage maybe more directly in whatever player's natural language. I don't know. But for me, is that a missed opportunity for the Marlins? No. Is it the fact that Skip has never managed before? Is that a problem? No. Who knows, though? The reality is, why the hype? That was the question that was asked. Why the hype around Skip Schumacher? Partly, it's because the Marlins have done something. So we're all excited about that. And also the hype is there. Like, we just don't know how this is going to play out. And I get that's where Keith Law was coming from, to go back to Keith. But to throw it out there and say, oh, there was a better candidate in Luis Rojas because he's had 2 terrible seasons with the Mets, that's a nonsense. It really is. Like, if the Marlins like the attributes, they like what they hear, that's the point of interviews. If you're going to not really weight anything towards the interviews, then why bother doing them? Why bother? And I think the Marlins have played it right. I trust Kim. Always have. Some will be laughing, but I do trust Kim. Not on free agency, or maybe that was Derek Jeter's problem. I don't know. But, in the main with Kim, I think she's a good read. And I think they've made the right call here, the Marlins. And I'm very excited to see. Some other news. It sounds like the Marlins are on the cusp of, and Kim on the cusp of getting an assistant GM in the building as well. The attention then turns to, so that'd be great. Obviously, manager, first order of business. We said that. It's a busy offseason for the Fish. Manager in, assistant GM in, a trusted one from a great franchise that's just about to embark on a World Series right now. Kim and him have connections. Oz. So I think it will be another big step for the Fish. Clearly, Kim needs some help on, from a front office perspective, because so many of Jeter's guys are gone. Kim is clearing house. She's bringing in her people. The connections there are historic, and we like to see it. I love the Skip hire. I think getting in the assistant GM as well, another big step. Then you can get into the staff. Sounds like Skip's going to move quickly to appoint his staff. And clearly the key question in terms of existing staff because all the rest can go. But Mel Stottlemyre Jr. clearly reading not between the lines with what Craig's putting on Twitter, but Craig feels really confident. And he said that on this show a few weeks back. He expects Mel Stottlemyre to remain with the Marlins for obvious reasons. However, from Kim's perspective, she needs to have the conversation with Skip to make sure that he's comfortable. They need to make sure Skip and Mel need to have a conversation. Make sure they're comfortable working together. Do the juices still flow for Mel? Yes, they do. Is it one of the best pitching coaches' jobs roles out there? Yes, it is. Maybe not financially overall. He's not going to be the number one paid pitching coach, but in terms of the level of talent that's around, and also the fact that he's been there for a few years and has serious connections with this pitching staff, Mel Stottlemyre will want to stay. As long as him and Skip see eye to eye, which I think they will. I mean, it's one of those, you got to keep Mel. You got to keep it. And I see it, it's kind of like flicking it over to like a Rams perspective, like from NFL. You know, they went out and hired, obviously, Sean McVay, up-and-coming stud, took a punt on McVay, but you had, Wade Phillips came in as a defensive coordinator there. And in reality, you had the kind of steady hand, which in reality is Mel. So there you go. Skip Schumacher and Mel Stottlemyre, effectively Sean McVay and Wade Phillips there. Didn't think I'd make that comp during this show, but I have, and I just thought about it on the spot. It may be wild, or off the mark, but nevertheless, threw it out there. Right, guys, wanted to let you know about our good friends over at Roan. And listen, we've talked about them a few times now. Absolutely love these guys. And the dress shirt, as I've mentioned, was due for a radical reinvention, and Roan have stepped up to that challenge big time. Their commuter shirt is the most comfortable, breathable, flexible shirt known to man, and here's why. Mobility, baby. Just ask Jacob Stallings. Mobility is everything. Roam's comfortable, full-way stretch fabric provides breathability and flexibility that leaves you free to enjoy what life throws your way from your commute to work, or even 18 holes of golf. Looking good is easy, and it's time to feel confident with a wrinkle-free shirt without the hassle. With Roan's wrinkle release technology, wrinkles disappear as you stretch and wear the shirt. It's that easy. The commuter shirt can get you through any workday and straight into whatever comes next. If you go and work, straight into cocktails, work, into baseball, doesn't matter. They're going to get you covered with this commuter shirt. You can head to roan.com/lockedon, use promo code LOCKEDON to save 20% off your entire order. That is 20% off your entire order when you head to roan.com/lockedon. Reminder on that promo code, locked on. And also reminder on the spelling of Roan. It is RHON. Locked on. Okay, so Skip is in. Assistant GM on the way. I also want to talk about the World Series, just briefly. It's coming up tomorrow. What is, the funny thing is, when we look back a few weeks back, all of these number one seeds were complaining because they had all this off, this downtime, because they weren't involved in the wild card. I've been thinking about this in more detail, and we wish JT Realmuto well, Brian Stanek well, probably a few others. Belatti, I think, is actually with the Phils, although I can't even remember him as a Marlin, to be honest with you. But this, to me, feels this delay because both series were wrapped up so soon and they've got their scheduling all baked in to optimize that and optimize tickets and optimize everything. I think, if you looked at it on paper anyway, you'd think that the Astros had the advantage. And I think actually this also layers into that advantage for the Astros. Why? The Phils were hot. It was scorching hot. Scorching hot. Tore it up in the wild card. Rolled in. Absolutely beat the Braves black and blue. Now they've had to sit, wait, and pause for 4 or 5 days. Can anything cool Bryce Harper down? I don't know, but maybe 4 or 5 off days could. And it's going to be interesting, right? Because it was all the talk when the Bravos came in cold and the Dodgers were caught cold and the bats were cold. That was the thing. It was that the bats were all dead for all these number one seeds. And so from the Phils, they have just blitzed some of these teams and some of these games. So is this pause going to create a problem for the Phils? I mean, I hope it goes deep, the series. Astros on paper are clearly the best team, But the Phils had the magic. They had the postseason magic. But does that delay hamper them? We're going to wait and see. We're going to wait and see. I want to round this episode off. Last 5 minutes, I want to talk about Joey Wendle specifically. I probably plan to spend more time with Wendle. I put it out there on Twitter earlier today as well. I was starting to look at Wendle's numbers from last year. Obviously, the hamstring problems were just prominent. Multiple times, hamstring gone. But clicked into Baseball Reference as you do. Only 347 at-bats. So, yes, the injuries hampered him, and he's lost out on, 200, 300 at-bats there if he played a full season. What struck out to me, 2.5 WAR. That's what I put out on Twitter. I was like, wow, that is a huge WAR. He's only hit, 3 home runs. He's hitting 260. I mean, is that the state of the game these days, where a 260 hitter with 3 home runs in half a season is a 2.5 WAR guy? You then go, well, maybe it's the defense. Maybe it's the defense. Like, the defense is okay, but I mean, come on, it's Joey Wendle. It's not Nolan Arenado. So the point I was making on Twitter earlier was WAR, it's so misleading in terms of evaluating players. If I look at Joey Wendle and go 2.5 WAR guy, like in half a year, so projected out, a 5 WAR guy, Joey Wendle, hitting 260, maybe, 8 home runs, no stolen bags, and okay defense. Come on. No way. So got to be careful with WAR. What is it good for? It's a talking point, let's say. But more interestingly with Wendle, here's the top level stuff. Final year of ARB this year. There is a club option. So there's I guess, if indeed he exceeds the ARB number, they have the club option, I believe, that they can trigger at 6 and a bit million. But I think his ARB number may be slightly lower. Let's say Joey Wendle, 6 million. First question. Is there a chance that the Marlins non-tender Joey Wendle? The answer is no. Here's the other question. Is there a chance that the Marlins trade Joey Wendle this offseason? I think that is a maybe. And the reason being, they effectively have multiple guys that are in the same spot. And it's all going to come down to roster construction, how they feel about Wendle more generally. Clearly a different type of approach with Skip Schumacher in town. What's he going to look for? To be honest with you, I think Joey Wendle absolutely fits his profile in terms of Skip Schumacher. So I think Wendle has a decent chance of playing a much more prominent role for the Marlins next year than perhaps he did last year, although in reality it was injuries that hurt him. So they're the questions. Is he going to go through ARB? Yes, he is. Or they've got the option. Could he be traded? Maybe. I think unlikely. So where does Wendle play in 2023? That is another question. Let's assume that Jazz Chisholm remains at second base. Could Joey Wendle be every day at third base? Maybe. John Birdie kind of flicking around? Maybe. This is the point. Like Wendle and John Birdie, kind of similar dudes in some ways, like super util guys. Goes back to the question asked about Brian Anderson. Where are we up to with Brian Anderson? What does his future hold? Aside from that, boy, oh boy, when you go and look at the Baseball Savant page, which is what got me going, I looked at Baseball Reference, 2.5 WAR in half a season. Wow, that feels inflated. You go and look at the Baseball Savant numbers, and what do you see? Or the sliders. You just see a ton of blue. Like Wendle just doesn't hit the ball hard. He doesn't strike out. He doesn't really walk, actually. So no Ks, decent batting average, no power, no nothing, and okay defense. I mean, he's 32 as well, Wendle. He's 32. So here's the other question. What do the Marlins do with Wendle in general? Is he a guy they look to extend at some point? Like, are they going to commit to Wendle? Does Wendle want to be there? I don't actually know the answer to that. Had a sense, like, at some point that maybe Wendle wasn't completely enamored with his time in Miami, but that's just pure speculation from me. Here's the thing I do like about Wendle. I talked about it the other day about Brian Anderson. What stood out for me? Well, the first thing is he batted in every lineup spot last year, 1 through 9. There was only a couple of at-bats in the 8th, 9th, and 5-hole, interestingly. A lot of time leading off, actually, Joey Wendle, which kind of fits, right? Because he's definitely a low-power, high-contact, low-strikeout guy. No walks, though, which is disappointing. But the bit that I was interested in, like I said about with Brian Anderson the other day, is what's he like with runners in scoring position? Because, again, for the Marlins, they just couldn't drive in any runs. With runners in scoring position last year, he was hitting .313. It was actually, other than runners at first and third, or second and third, sorry. It was his best batting average in terms of runners on, off, and where they were in the position of the game. So that's what I love to see. Joey Wendle hitting 313, runners in scoring position. Love to see it. No power, that's a problem. So does that mean, like, where does that take Joey Wendle's profile? Like, what kind of guy is he? Could he be? Should he be? We spoke about John Birdie the other day. Me and Sean Barrett said for John Birdie, hit him in the 9th spot. Use the speed down there. If John Birdie's playing, which maybe he will. But the question I also have is Joey Wendle an everyday player? And I think he is. And let's not forget he was an all-star in 2021. So I think Joey Wendle is. The question is where does he play? And I think that comes down to, what are the Marlins going to do with Miguel Rojas? What are they going to do with Brian Anderson? Those are the two impact pieces, I think. And then what's the knock-on impact with Jazz Chisholm? If they decide to move Jazz to short and go, listen, Jazz, we're going to commit to you at short, then that opens up that second base spot. Would you be happy with Joey Wendle playing pretty much every day at second base? I think the answer is yes. I mean, you can platoon him with Birdie. When you look at his his splits, versus righties hitting 266, versus lefties, as we expect, hitting 230. So an obvious platoon candidate there, perhaps. Again, this all hinges on where do the Marlins go with short. Because Miggy, the glove, as we know, is since the stick is dropped off. Can they get the stick going again with Miggy? Do they want to move Miggy? It all hinges on this infield hinges there. We know Jazz is going to be playing. Do they platoon him? Maybe they do. I don't know. But there's a lot of question marks around Joey Wendle in many ways. However, the main ones are, I think he'll be on the roster in 23. I think he fits the profile of what Skip Schumacher is looking for. Gritty guy. Remember back in the days early in the season when the Marlins were actually like in the hunt, winning games, they were on a streak? The porn star plumber. Every time you'd look at him and see him, he was the best hitter. He was just the best pure hitter that the Marlins had. Easily. Hands down. Yes, Jazz putting up some serious numbers. And yes, Jesus Sanchez back then. Do you remember that? In April and May? And Jesus. Yeah, I do. And at those times, Jazz, Jesus, and 3 combined were doing some serious stuff. Joey Wendle, great with runners in. The question is, should he be leading off? I'm not convinced the profile is amazing. I'd still think they find their center fielder with that prototypical skill set leading off. Sounds like Jazz wants to play and hit in the 2-hole. Jazz, wherever you think, you hit there. Craig Mish has already put it out there. He's confirmed it with Jazz. Yep, let's plug him in. So Joey Wendle, he actually was hitting cleanup relatively frequently at the back end of the season. For someone with zero power contact, I've no idea what the Marlins were doing with that one. Maybe it was just the runners in scoring position numbers. Perhaps that was it, which kind of makes sense. But, sliding Joey Wendle downwards maybe to that kind of 5-6 spot feels kind of right to me. Again, it all hinges on where they go with this roster, but I'd prefer to see Wendle a little bit lower down, 5-6 hole, no problem for me. Probably platooning. Birdie can obviously come and be his platoon partner. I think that works. So that's us done. Thursday's episode of Locked On Marlins. Me, Peter Pratt, sign out. Thank you for making us listen of the day. We're going to be back tomorrow on Friday. And like I said, 95% certain that Craig Mish will be joining us for a Locked On Mishes. As we know, there's a lot been going on, and Swings and Mishes currently in full production. So we hope to bring Craig to this audience in the meantime. Hope you enjoyed this episode, guys. Irrespective of whether Craig's on the show, I'll be back tomorrow. See you then.